when we get there, because damn you Hollywood, we could talk about that. But damn you Hollywood has always been, I think, between me and Robert, and then Robert, me, and Hollywood, a very antagonistic relationship.
Oh yeah.
We are all about friction. We are all about, Robert and I call each other out. We call Hollywood out. That's like the whole podcast. So when I think about what is damn you Hollywood, you know, if I can go back,
way back.
if I can go back. So as we've told the story a couple of times throughout different podcasts about where damn you Hollywood came from. Originally, way back in the old timey times, I went to go see a bunch of movies over the summer, and I wanted to talk about them since I was going to the movies anyway. So this is whenever I think it was Star Trek Into Darkness came out, Man of Steel. Like my daughter was maybe 1 or 2 years old. Um, so I'd been doing the Ground and Pound show for a little while now, and I'd made friends with a bunch of different guys from 411. And since I was going to the movies, I was like, let me see if one of these guys wants to review them with me. It's like in the afternoon, just an hour, and I think Jeff Harris stepped up because he was the movie review guy. And I did that for one summer season. I just like the beginning of the summer season to the end of the summer season. We kind of covered all like the weekly, whatever the movie of the week was. And Jeff and I got along fairly well. We didn't argue too much during that period, but when it was done, and I didn't want to do it again. And then I took a few years off, and then I went to go see The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I loved it.
Oh, this is the Electro. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this is the one with Jamie Foxx's Electro.
Jamie Foxx.
And I loved it. Pat Mullen was like, "It's an affront, I tell you. It's an affront to Spider-Man and Marvel fans, and I will not have this." And I was like, it's the best representation of Spider-Man on film. Like I felt that strongly about it. Like I never thought up to that point there had been a better representation of Spider-Man in the movies. He could not have disagreed with me more. That being said, we decided to I have a podcast. Let's have this debate.
Let's have it out.
And I brought in the arbitrator of fairness, Robert Winfrey. And it's a debate between the two of us.
Birthday boy himself.
That's right. And it went well. It went well. We had ourselves a good discussion, and we liked it so much we decided we were going to keep doing it. Pat fell off shortly thereafter. Like he didn't last long, but Robert and I kept doing it, and we kept doing it. And at first it was just the major movies, and then as time wore on, we started to go weekly. And then I had some trouble with my finances one year, so we took the first quarter off and came back, I think, for Deadpool. I think it was that year. We took January, February, and March off. No, so it couldn't have been Deadpool. No, you know what it was? We came back for Logan. That's what it was.
Okay.
That was 2017. And then, I went crazy and started podcasting every night of the week, and we were doing synergy weeks and everything. But during that time, we didn't really know what to call this. It was just for a little while there, it was the 401 Movie Review Club. Then it was just the Radulich and Broadcasting Movie Review Club. The Summer Blockbuster Series is what we called it one year. And then I think it was during the podcast where we reviewed the Magnificent Seven that we were joking around, and I just kind of went, "Damn you, Hollywood!" And that's our name, "Damn you, Hollywood."
Yeah. And I remember that podcast. I remember listening to it. I remember. So this had to have been, at least prior to 2017, because I remember listening to it at my previous residence. So I don't know when specifically you guys came up with that, but what specific podcast it was. You just said it was 2016. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So but yeah, I can remember being outside, and that's a weird watershed moment that I can recall. Where were you when they shot Kennedy? I can recall where I was. I was taking the trash out on whatever night it was, outside of the house, listening to the podcast when you guys came up with it. But anyway, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so we became Damn You Hollywood from that point on. And for a while there, I think we used a couple of different iterations of Hooray for Hollywood. we started talking about finance sort of just to talk about it. Like, it never had its own segment in the beginning. Like, those first couple of years, we brought stuff up because I think it was important to just discuss budgets, and it would bleed out of some of the discussions we were having about the movie. Like, this isn't very good, yes, but it's doing very well, and we sort of taking the temperature of the movie going public throughout these. So we were talking about budgets, we were talking about worldwide grosses. We were doing a lot of digging into Box Office Mojo when that site was actually usable. And then eventually it just got its own segment because I would yell out here comes the money, and we would play Shane McMahon's theme. So that's how that came up. One podcast, I think we started like in the beginning of it. I was like, Robert, you gotta see some of the reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. These are fucking hilarious. And I was reading them to drive him crazy, and I just kept doing it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then the original theme of the Rotten Tomatoes segment was just what's his nuts screaming from The Office, screaming no. Yeah, I told him, because it was kind of his segment, I was like, well, I need you to pick the theme. This is your deal. So just tell me what you want me to play. And he was like, I got it for you. And he sends it to me, and I'm like, all right. I was thinking music, but sure. Let's just have a guy scream no for no good reason. But it was Robert's sort of way of complaining about reviewers and going, like, to read these reviews was to drive him absolutely mad, I tell you.
Oh, yeah.
And then because I knew that was the case, I would be like, Robert, are you ready? What's led to the DX? Yeah, what's led to the DX thing, and that's how we ended up with that segment. So that's the genesis of how we got to where we are today. And then when we went to video and I needed pictures, I initially found a picture. I've always thought the best representation of Damn You Hollywood was the Hollywood sign on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Which I did find. And then Alexis was like, I will make you art. Let me help. Let me be a part of this. So that's how we have the current theme that we have today. And now we are into the next iteration of Damn You Hollywood, the post-AI generated music generation.
AI age has come upon us.
So our new logo is entirely AI generated from my mind, and we're gonna make music for it. So Jesse, you got any memories of Damn You Hollywood before we get into making the music?
No. Like I said, I mean, the big moment of you guys coming up with the title that sticks out in my mind. Listening to you, I mean, I've listened to just about every single one of them. I'm one of the guys that usually wants to see the movie before I listen to the review, obviously, because you guys are going to spoil it pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But anytime I catch the movie, I immediately go back and find the review so I can listen to it. What are the big episodes? I can already tell you that it's the Transformers episode, right? Yeah. Like
Transformers Age of Extinction. I just re-listened to that because epically, every time I talk about it, it's like you would think Robert and I tried to kill each other on that show. It's not that bad. I made it worse than it really was.
Okay. All right.
A couple of things about that show. One, we did that on YouTube Hangout.
Nice. That's a throwback.
Yeah, we had to do that on YouTube Hangout because Blog Talk Radio did not work that night. You know how much trouble Blog Talk Radio gave us over the years, especially as we started to go into Spreaker, which I think was 2018. That last, and like I said, I think I was just telling you recently or telling somebody else, I just recently put up all of the Metal Hammer of Dooms. And those last dozen or so episodes are fucking unlistenable.
Oh, dude, I'll never forget. You took the night off when we did the first Scar Symmetry that I wanted to cover. And there was an echo that, I mean, it was there for like the first half hour of the episode. Right. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I really dig this band. I want to review this thing. And my review sounds like shit. Boy, it was rough. It was rough.
I think historically, it's Metallica Hardwired to Self-Destruct that when I had to quit the podcast, that made me go to Sean and be like, I have to, either I'm going to not podcast at all, or I have to find another distributor because I can't do this anymore.
There's no way. There's no way.
Even some of the old episodes of Damn You Hollywood are unlistenable. Like, I just threw them up as they were because I didn't think to edit them at the time. And I was just in a rush to get all of this content back out, out of the archive. But I've gone back and listened to every single episode of Damn You Hollywood from the very beginning, and never mind the audio quality is crap on Blog Talk Radio. Like, we're using tin cans and fucking string.
Oh yeah, dude. Like you would call it. So you'd be hosting the podcast, and then the person would call in, and then somehow Blog Talk would drop the host, so the host got to call back in on the call-in line.
Blog Talk Radio was completely racist against Ben Cologne. He never had a good experience with calling in.
It was horrible. Yeah. It was horrible.
So that was one of the nights where Blog Talk Radio completely broke down, and like I wanted to do the show, and so we did it on Google Hangouts. And I listened back to it, and that's also a night where Melissa's like, I'm going to be a little late. I got the kids. I'm going to my mother's. I'm going to be home a little late. And a little late was 9:00 as I'm starting the Google Hangout after I've already lost my fucking mind because I can't get Blog Talk Radio to work. So the first little bit of the podcast is me ranting about how Melissa's late.
Oh, boy.
And I remember it too.
Oh boy.
It's no wonder we're getting divorced. By the way. Because she's next to me while this is all happening. She's like, because I start the Google Hangout with like, welcome to the Radulich and Broadcasting movie review, blah, blah, blah. And the door opens and I get a text going, will you help me with the kids? And I'm like, motherfucker.
What?
But the podcast itself was basically Robert's like, it's too long. The movie's too long. And I'm like, all right, so what are you cutting? And he's like, cut everything with this character. I'm like, you can't cut Mark Wahlberg out of the movie, you nutcase. You know? He's like, cut everything with Stanley Tucci. He wanted to just like cut the whole fucking movie. It's like he didn't want to watch it. Is the real problem.
It's rough.
But yeah, that's a lot of that fight. Is him going, basically, it's too long. Cut this. I'm like, you can't. And we're the review itself is just us arguing over how would you edit this movie down to an even 2 hours. Deadpool is also one that I cite as being, particularly contentious. You got to understand, when Robert and I first started reviewing movies, he was an unchallenged genius, and I wasn't necessarily going into these with the most critical of minds either. So there's me who's just having a good time and enjoying them, and then there's him who, as near as I can tell, and I can't tell you this for total sure, but it feels like he had very strong opinions about movies and nobody ever said boo to him at all.
Okay.
So you have this unchallenged genius versus this guy who's not afraid to confront people and tell them when I think they're wrong. And we just fucking clashed on Deadpool. He was like, he's better now. We've both become better critics through the course of doing this, but iron sharpens iron. We made each other better. And one of the things that I think I was responsible for with him was he was very much of the, if I hate it, it's bad because I have the objective eye of God, So a lot of it was, I didn't like it. It's terrible. And I'm like, you didn't like it, period.
That was it.
Doesn't make it bad, sir. So there's a lot of him going, I didn't like Deadpool. This doesn't really touch me. So it's a bad movie. And I'm like, it's not a bad movie though. And here's why. Here are all the things that are good about it. And I'll never forget that podcast because my friend Tom, like one of my best friends, he heard it and he was like, why did you bully that guy? He was like, it was a hard podcast to listen to because you're clearly bullying him into changing his mind. And I'm like, and I went back and I listened to that one too. And I'm like, I don't think that's what happened here, but like I said,
did Winfrey change his mind? There's no way. Like, I couldn't see him possibly.
Go back and listen to it. He accepts more of my arguments than not.
Okay, all right. Well, accepting your argument's a different story.
Well, Robert very rarely admits when he's wrong.
I mean, look, I have a hard time doing that myself because, but the good thing is you just kind of, you move on past it. You just let bygones be bygones. I think the
difference between like you and me talking Back to the Future 2 and me and Robert talking about Deadpool are miles apart. You would like, you state your case. I go, I don't think that's true. And you're like, well, I'm not going to argue with you about it anymore. That was that whole podcast. Where Robert had to learn to do that. He didn't come to that naturally.
So you guys a partnership. You guys have obviously grown together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I've said recently I won't do Damn You Hollywood without him.
Yeah.
Like
You
I'll
guys are
continue to do triple
great
features
listeners.
and on trials, but as far as like that new movie of the week thing, I won't do it with it. I won't do it consistently with anyone else.
Yeah. And any idea, like off the top of your head, like some of the most listened to episodes?
On audio only or on YouTube?
Wherever you want to go. Don't trust YouTube though, because your guys are throwing those numbers up there that are people who are looking to watch the movie, and the 9,000 Indian people log in and leave comments. And
I can quick look at the stats and tell you. Now it's not going to be a completely accurate stat because Spreaker only will go back so far.
I don't want to talk about Spreaker.
But yeah, we're all kind of annoyed with Spreaker right now. So it'll go back right now. It'll go back as far as October 1st of 2022. So it's got 2 years worth of data I can look at.
Okay.
And the most listened to Damn You Hollywood in the last 2 years that I can see is SpongeBob the movie Sponge on the Run.
Animation is where it's at. It feels like.
Yeah, that was me. That was me and Alexis, by the way. The re-airing of Moana. That's a close second. Yeah, believe it or not. Let's see. Minions: The Rise of Gru.
Yep.
Fast X from 2023. Oh, look, something that's actually like somewhat new.
Yeah.
That had 100. That's currently it's got 130 listens. It looks like.
Nice.
Yeah, 130 total downloads. Those Fast and the Furious fucking reviews are also hilarious.
I love listening to Winfrey get upset about physics. It's one of my favorite things to hear him get so mad about how we're supposed to accept like cars flying in the air like it is. And yeah, those are fun.
A couple of my favorite moments just off the top of my head, because we reviewed a lot of movies, and especially since I started clipping some stuff out for TikTok, some stuff stays a little bit more fresh in my head. But Tomorrowland, when he started to talk about his clinical depression.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
When Winfrey shows his real boy side, when he's not a sarcastic, sardonic robot, and he actually acts like a human being and he's vulnerable. Those are some of my favorite Winfrey moments. The Tomorrowland one, when he talked about his clinical depression, that was one of them. Us constantly fighting about Minions versus the year that Minions made more money than Inside Out.
Inside Out.
That was hilarious. I'll never, because he gave you such shit about that for months on end.
I thought, and because of that, I was just in a recent box office challenge and chose the Minions to beat out Inside Out. I think everybody probably expected that to happen. They didn't expect Inside Out 2 to do what the Minions movie did, and that was completely backwards.
Yeah,
Inside Out 2.
This year Inside Out 2 beat the Minions, but Minions 4 or Minions 3, whatever one we're up to. No, this was Despicable Me 4. Is what
Despicable
happened.
Me. Oh yeah, that's right. This is not Minions, but it's Minion related, Minion adjacent.
Either way, so anyway, another I don't remember which podcast it was, but I was getting in Winfrey's ass about something, and he finally snapped at me, and and was like, "I'm on this podcast. I'm going to say what I want," and I'm like, "All right, sorry."
Yeah, poke the bear, Radulich.
Well, he would do things like he would say something, and I'm like, "Why are you bringing that up? That's stupid." And I would do that to him a lot, and he would somewhat change what he would say and why he was saying it. But he did get to a point where he was like, "No, this is important. Shut the fuck up." And I'm like, all right, sorry.
Good for him.
There are some absolute dogs of reviews, and part of it was we were not feeling well. I think Mortal Kombat has to be the worst review we've ever done in terms of you would not know we were friends. He was having dental pain, and so this has got to be 20. This is after the
right during the pandemic, right? You guys are talking about the one that released on Max, HBO Max.
Yeah, so it's 2021.
Okay.
And I haven't started taking injections yet to fix my immune system. So my mouth is completely fucked up. So he's having dental pain. I'm having dental pain. I'm like trying to recover with no immune system from chemo and cancer. And that was the night. It was like me, him, Alexis, and I think Jason. This was the new Mortal Kombat movie. So it was only a couple years ago. And I kept making like dick jokes. Like, oh, Mortal Kombat starring Long Duck Dawn, starring enormous genitals. And Robert, on his best day, isn't a huge fan of my sexual humor. When he has no patience, it's even worse. And he fucking like yelled at me on the podcast, and I think I accepted it at that time because I knew how much pain he was in. But there have been other times where he got real nasty with me, and I had to tell him, I'm like, if you continue to act this way, not only will we not do this podcast anymore, but we won't be friends. Whew. I'm not going to put up with your bullshit.
Goodness.
Oh yeah, we've had some over the years. We have definitely like been ready to like fight each other on occasion.
Spats, as they say.
Yeah, look, every good relationship has them. I love Robert to death. I take a bullet for the guy, but he can be a lot, just like I can be a lot. This was supposed to be for fun, and he would get abusive at times. And they were like, I'm not going to put up with this. Like, I just won't do this with you anymore. It's fine.
Dark days, my goodness.
On the other hand, we've had some really great moments. You know, I'll never forget that Banshees of Inisherin show. That was part of a larger Best Picture contenders podcast. Mm-hmm. I mentioned this to Neil and Chris the other day. I said Alexis had to feel like the lone straight girl in a threesome with two gay guys. Like, why am I here? Because we're talking. Because if you've ever seen the Banshees of Inisherin, if you listen to that podcast, it talks about the nature of friendship. And Robert starts talking about how, you know, there's a difference between like all of us and our online. Now, you and I have met in person, but
nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Jesse and I saw Rage Against the Machine together.
And you picked that shirt up, if I remember correctly.
I did at that show in Ohio.
That's right.
So long story short, and then we can get into making music. Sorry, I got distracted by different things.
I derailed him. Friendship.
Yeah, friendship. Or whatever. Sorry. Yeah, the Banshees of Ed Sheeran. So he's talking about like the nature of friendship and everything, and he's like, I've never met you in person, and and while I treasure this friendship and I value it, there's a big difference between what we're doing, you know, real life friendship versus online friendships, virtual friendships.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And I don't disagree with that, and I got it. But I think we both recognize that the friendship that we do have, such as it is valuable and one that we want to continue having. You have any other questions about Damn You Hollywood? Because like I said, that show was, oh my God, I got to talk about this. The podcast that actually broke W2M. So for those that don't know, W2M Network is not my thing. It's Sean Garmer's thing. It started out as Wrestling to the Max, and then he brought in a bunch of different people and over the years has had a bunch of different shows. And he's also a 401 Mania guy. So he was doing like wrestling and video games, and we started doing like content exchanges where I would take all of his wrestling and video game stuff and I would give him all my movie and TV show stuff and Metal Hammer of Doom. And then I quit Blog Talk Radio and I went on to StreamYard. And he was paying for an unlimited account, and I used the non-unlimited account. And we ran it. There were at least 2 different times we hit the data cap. On
oh my gosh, the
Spreaker.
Data cap.
Oh, yeah, where it was like tapping an old feed, and it suddenly filled up with a bunch of podcasts from Blog Talk Radio or something. Yeah, it was. Oh God, we kept doing that. So anyway, so. It was that. So eventually I went to Sean and I'm like, hey, why don't you just bring me into W2M and I will just give up having my own feed. And I said, I don't necessarily want to be like part and parcel of how this operation works. I kind of want to be Hawaii. And I just want to do my own thing and I will pay you rent. That worked fine for a while. And then the guys that he had a part of this were like, let's make this a real business. You're a huge part of it. You're a big content provider. You have to be a part of it too. So we brought in somebody else, and then they wanted to run it like a television network where we couldn't have podcasts going on at the same time, which was retarded because it's not like you don't have television shows going on at the same time. Like TNN and TNT both operate at the same time and both have television shows. I don't know why this was a problem, but they were like, we don't want to have competing podcasts. And which brings me to the night that Robert and I broke this company, because we reviewed The Northman, and I was going through like the poly, the stuff that would eventually lead to me and Melissa splitting up. So I was not in a good headspace at the time. And like, we just talked about our friendship, and we talked about the podcast, and we were just talking about life, the universe, and everything. And eventually, 3 hours into it, we got to The Northman. And it was good. I needed it. It was therapeutic.
Therapy.
It was one of my favorite podcasts because, one, we loved the movie. We had a lot of really positive things to say about it, but also, like, I just needed to talk to my friend. And then we get off the thing, and like everybody quit the network. They were
I remember this.
Eric and all them were fucking furious.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Eric had some real problems with me. He didn't like my attitude. He didn't like the way I handled things. And, they thought I was pushing too much content at the time, which maybe I was. Who knows? So yeah, The Northman's a pretty infamous spot, infamous Damn You Hollywood. Because Jesus Christ, if one podcast was going to break the network, it was going to be Damn You Hollywood.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
my gosh.
Over the years, we've had a lot of guests on Damn You Hollywood. You and Ronnie were on. Do you remember the one that you were on where I fucked up the sound and didn't record you and Ronnie? And you had,
it was we released it because it was just you talking to us, but you couldn't hear us at all. Oh yes,
and
then
then you edited out all the truncated the silence, so you edited out you and Ronnie.
Yes.
It's 20 minutes shorter, and it's just me laughing at myself the entire time. I think that was too rare. Robert was on like a rafting trip, I think, that week.
That's right.
One. That's a good
this
one.
Was this Turtles or something? Like, I feel like he was out because
you came on for a Ninja Turtles movie.
Okay, all right. Yep, I remember that.
Jason and I have done a bunch just by ourselves because Robert wasn't interested or whatever. Ronnie and I would do some just, because at Ronnie's suggestion. So like, he wanted to do The Last Night, he wanted to do The Green Knight. So that's just me and Ronnie. Gosh, Alexis thought she was one of the co-hosts for a while. Alexa started asking to be on the show and then wouldn't go away for like years. and then would say, like, do I have to do this one? I'm like, you don't have to do any of these. Who asked you to be here? So yes, she presumptuous bitch. That's the term she used.
Oh, a week or my two ago. Goodness.
That was her term, not mine. That she told herself that when she thought she was hosting Ash.
So hard. Don't be so hard on yourself. Come on now.
So anyway, anything else about Damn You Hollywood before we get into all this?
No, man. I mean, this is it's one of the staples. Yeah. I think it's the
mothership, baby.
It is. It really is. I mean, because when there's discussion in our chat just amongst us, which is, we're all fans of each other's stuff. We try to listen as much as we can.
Sure.
And everybody's listening. Everybody has something to say usually about Damn You Hollywood. So it is, as far as flagship goes. Yeah, everybody knows about this show, and just about everybody listens to it. So, but yeah, man, I'm glad we get to work on making an intro for it.
All right.